Hey everyone, Tankenstein here. In this video I'll be going over my Diablo Immortal first impressions and kind of how I see this game, being that I've played every Diablo extensively up through even Immortal. I've actually got quite a few hours in this game thus far, and I've been impressed with some things and not so impressed with others, so I want to go over that in this video. That said, of course, this is a little bit out of my wheelhouse. Typically I do War Thunder content, but I've been a huge Diablo fan ever since Diablo 1, before Diablo 2 was even released. I was playing Diablo 1 and having a great time. But without further ado, let's get into the video, and I'll try to make this one fairly short, but also extremely informative. So Immortal is pretty much a direct port from mobile to PC, which is telling in how the graphics are. In short, this is like a lower resolution version of Diablo 3, a game which actually just celebrated its 10-year anniversary on May 15th, 2022. It is, after all, a mobile to PC game and not the other way around, so considering that, the graphics are actually quite decent, especially for the fact that this is pretty much zoomed-in graphics for what a mobile game is. I actually downloaded this and played it on my phone quite extensively as well, and my phone is a Galaxy S21 FE in case you're wondering, and I experienced excellent graphics which, at the scale of a phone compared to a 2K 27-inch gaming monitor, I felt that it looked amazing. You can even play in progress on the same character on both your PC and phone, which is excellent. I mean, seriously, imagine back 20 years ago, you're playing Diablo 2, and you could just bring it along on your phone and get the same progress. That's awesome. You just need to be aware that, as of right now, characters are server locked, meaning that if you make a character on one server, he or she will stay locked into that server. So you need to remember which server you decide to progress on, at least for the time being. And throughout this video, in case you didn't notice, I will be using video from the PC gaming that I've been doing. Though again, this is the same game as it is on mobile, so it's very much interchangeable except for some of the controls. Of course, because you don't have a mouse and keyboard on your phone. That said, I just want to jump right into the likes and dislikes, and there are some pretty major likes that I have with this game. So first and foremost, something that really stuck out to me, and I'm actually blown away by it, excellent monster and character design. The monsters look absolutely horrifying, from gigantic spider demons to blood eagle creatures to even your average enemies. I think they all look great. In this regard, Blizzard has hit it out of the park with Diablo Immortal. It seems very reminiscent of Dead Space, which is a great comparison to give. I mean, because some of these things, they look like sci-fi demon creatures in a way, much more so Dead Space than previous Diablo games in some cases. I mean, it is actually pretty spooky, because you would imagine some of these things, again, to kind of be on a ship in the middle of space, a derelict ship, attacking you from corners. It's just really crazy, and if you didn't have the same kind of top-down perspective that you do in Diablo Immortal, I could see this actually being a horror game for a lot of people. Secondly, great model scaling. In the past, from Diablo 1 through Diablo 3, the game looked very zoomed out, which made it difficult to judge the scale of many creatures. For example, in Diablo 2, Diablo himself looked like a large enemy, but nothing more. In Diablo 3, the scaling was a bit better, but still not great. In Diablo Immortal, I truly feel the scope of the enemies, with some of them being too big to fit on the screen. I feel that this is actually more of a consequence of this being a mobile game first and PC port second, but of course, it is still very impressive, and kudos to Blizzard again for how they did their characters. Third, the color palette is excellent. Diablo 3 had a big weakness that, in my opinion, had just a bit too bright of a color palette. They toned it down here, and when combined with the aforementioned likes I've had, have really allowed it to make the game look great. Fourth, I feel that the controls are intuitive for both PC and the phone. They're very responsive, and despite the occasional hiccup, at least on PC, where an enemy is temporarily untargetable, the game flow works great, and a workaround for that, in case you're experiencing that, is just to use a skill, and you'll be able to target the enemy again. And for my final like, it has tons to do. Between bounties, rifts, regular storyline quests, paragons, etc., you will never be short of things to do. You could tell that one of the main focuses of Blizzard in creating Diablo Immortal was to make this game as addictive as possible, which is both good and bad. It's good for people that can control their urges to play video games, but for those that legitimately struggle with addiction, especially in the face of video games, it can create issues. This leads me to my first dislike, which is incredibly aggressive monetization. This is something so many people have been talking about with Diablo Immortal, and it needs to be said, and this dislike possibly way outweighs any of my likes. So again, incredibly aggressive monetization. At every turn, this game tries to get you to buy something, whether it's Battle Pass, an enhanced Battle Pass, monetized chests that you unlock for purchase by completing dungeons, crests to spice up rift loot, tons of cosmetics, and more. The list goes on. And if you're really looking to be the best in-game, I've read some estimates that say that in order to fully deck out your character in top-level items, it will cost anywhere from $40,000 to upwards of 6 figures, which is insane. But I'm sure that at least a few people will either go all the way with that or still spend thousands of dollars making their character close enough to being the most powerful. And this is really because they have such low drop rates that the only way to get the better items is to literally purchase them with money. And they actually make it so that, for example, with legendary crests, which give you the best gems in game, in order to get the best of the best gems in game, they have a pity system where if you get 50 rifts modified with these legendary crests and you still have not gotten a top level gem, you will actually get one out of, again, pity after 50 of these rifts. But the thing is that you can only buy 45 at a time, and if I'm not mistaken, it's for $100. So they're doing it where basically you have to purchase numerous of these packages. They're not going to give you it all at once, which is really shady. And for you to have to spend basically $2, a touch more than $2 to get per legendary crest to be able to get these special loot is just absolutely crazy. And then for my second dislike, and really the biggest dislike again is the monetization, but I feel that this is somewhat like a watered-down version of Diablo 3. While the monster design is indeed excellent, the fact that they stayed so close to the template of Diablo 3, even 10 years after its initial release, begs comparison. And that way, if you told me 10 years ago that Diablo Immortal was to be released in 2022, and you showed me game footage, I'd be a bit shocked, as there isn't much progression in game design, even considering that it's a PC game compared to a mobile game in Diablo Immortal. It just feels that they took Diablo 3 and copied many of the assets over to Diablo Immortal without really putting too much thought into it, especially after the relatively long development period of Diablo Immortal. It's kind of a bit of a shame in that regard. But overall, I'll say that I've been very impressed, especially being that this is a mobile game. My main concern is the monetization that is so in your face. At every turn, you not only have another chance to buy something with real money, but you're almost guided to do so. This game constantly reminds you of the fact that you can pay what appears to be a small amount of money to progress faster, when it ends up being a substantial chunk of change over time. I would much rather have a $60 full game, such as what I hope Diablo 4 will be like, and not be thrown to microtransactions, than to have a free-to-play game that allows you to progress and gain gear and upgrades as quickly as said $60 full game, but only if you pay more and more money to the machine. The problem with Diablo Immortal is that, while it is free-to-play, many players will end up paying substantially more than they would if they purchase a $60 full game only once. Of course, this is their choice, but I would caution people to stay more on the casual side of this game until we really see how deep the monetization rabbit hole goes. Because it seems that as people look more into it, Diablo Immortal is more and more money hungry than previously thought. Either way, if we weren't already, we are now officially in the era of AAA mobile games. And while the base gameplay for Diablo Immortal feels great, the monetization model is extremely aggressive and arguably predatory. I understand that games are not just made to be made, especially not when they come from huge companies, but it's troubling to see this level of monetization where, in order to be the best in-game, or even to have great gear, you'll be likely forced to spend hundreds of dollars or more, whereas the best players have to possibly spend tens of thousands of dollars, again, USD. It's a shame too, because I'm having a great time playing this game, but to see that every time I complete a new dungeon or do anything new, the game reminds me to spend money, it's a bit disheartening and is so pervasive that it actually takes from an otherwise good or even great gaming experience. While this is definitely a good Diablo game, it just doesn't really feel like it lives up to the legacy, not because the gameplay is bad. Of course, again, it does feel a little bit like a watered down Diablo 3, but that's understandable being that it's mobile, but it just feels like it took the legacy and just really crazily modified it, and they took the passion out of Diablo, which is really a darn shame. But either way, thank you so much for watching. Please, of course, like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'm interested to see what your opinions are. But either way, thanks again, and I'll see you all on the other side. Take care, everyone.